Delay is a really cool effect that you're going to hear utilized a lot in music and recording scenarios. All it does is takes an audio signal and repeat it a certain amount of times in a specific interval, usually determined by a millisecond or linked to your recording software. Now, in most recording software, your delay is going to be linked to the master tempo. In this case up here, we've got the session set at 165 beats per minute right now. So this delay timing, because we've got the sync clicked on here, that's going to set it to quarter notes, eighth notes, dotted eighth notes, and we've got a bunch of other variables in here as well. You can also unsync this, and a lot of delays will allow you to dial in the delay time in milliseconds. So if you know your exact time that you want to have on the delay, you can go ahead and fine-tune that. The other control that you'd have to worry about is going to be your feedback control, and all this is it will allow it to repeat a specific amount of time. So all it's doing is it's feeding back the output from the delay at a rate of 40% of the signal, so that each time it feeds back, it's only passing through 40% of the audio, so it will eventually trail off. Now with the different timings on this, you can do a couple different effects on here. So if we set it to our quarter notes here, it's going to repeat every time there's another quarter note. And with the feedback here, we can go ahead and adjust that as well. We can set this down to 0%, where it's only going to repeat once, or we can set it all the way up to 100%. Now, Ableton Live, the delay in here is a little different because, as you can see, it only goes up to 95%. The reasoning for that is if you have it set to 100%, it's just going to create an infinite feedback loop, which is pretty useless in most recording scenarios. The opposite side of that is that you can use it in some pretty cool effects, especially with like guitar. If you've heard of the carbon copy delay pedal, there's a trick you can do on that where you increase the feedback up all of the amount on there, and then you modulate the timing as it's feeding back to get some cool effects. So we'll go ahead and listen to what that sounds like. So it's a pretty cool effect. It's not really always useful, but it can be used off and on for effect. We can also see that with the sync, we've got our eighth notes here as well. So with that, since it's repeating a little quicker, sometimes you can increase the feedback a little more to make it carry on to the next note. And we've also got our dotted eighth notes, which make a really neat effect on here. If you play within the same tempo and you're keeping your timing correct, it's going to delay the notes in between the notes that you're actually playing. If you're familiar with U2, their guitarist The Edge uses this effect a whole lot, and it can make for some really cool patterns on here. So we'll go ahead and see what that sounds like. You can kind of hear the notes are being delayed exactly in between the notes that are being played. So without the delay, it just sounds like this, but when you slowly increase that delay, it fills in the gaps between those. Now, if you have the delay up as loud as your original signal, it's going to make a pretty cool effect there, but sometimes you may want to dial that back a little bit so that you hear the original note louder than you hear the delayed notes on there. The other cool thing about using that type of delay is that when you're playing individual note runs, like your scales and solos and things like that, it can make for some pretty cool effects as well. And again, you can decrease the feedback so there's only one note, and that leaves some space for the next note to take over. Or you can really increase the feedback and make it sound really thick. Now lastly, we're going to take a look at what delays sound like on vocals. There's a lot of different vocal techniques that you can use with delays, and usually with vocals you can get away with a little bit more of a delay, provided that you keep the mix a little bit lower. So with this one here, you see we've got the delay a little over halfway of the amount being sent to the delay. Now with this, we can, as I said, you can get a little bit more of a feedback as long as this is lower in the mix. And that kind of helps create a nice bed underneath the original vocal. Now usually you're going to want to have this in about quarter notes because it keeps in time with the song. It's not quite as noticeable, but you can kind of hear it if you're listening to it. But that really serves to make the vocal sound a lot bigger. So you'll hear this used in a lot of songs, and you can even change this up a little bit in the chorus to add some more impact. You can do that a couple ways by just turning the delay up a little bit more, making it more noticeable. And another trick is to take it down to eighth note repeats. This again creates more of that slapback effect and gives it a little more presence in the mix, brings it forward a bit more. And since the delay is repeating quicker and dying off quicker, you can also increase the feedback a little bit more with that as well. You can hear right now it sounds a lot bigger than it originally did. So that's about it for delays. The really cool effects to go ahead and use on pretty much any kind of instrument. You'll generally hear them more so on melodic instruments, vocals, and drums here and there. It can help to kind of widen the stereo image of that as well. But a lot of it is just playing around with it and seeing what sounds right. And now you hopefully know how to use them a little better.